In our study of innovation, it's important to recognize that there are startups that are highly innovative. There are also a number of large firms and established companies that are very innovative as well. So we're going to take a look at a few of those, both in the U.S. and abroad, and get a feel for what are they doing within these large organizations to be innovative and to be sustainably innovative for their customers and their employees. And there are a lot of lists out there annually that do this. So by one measure, you have the various consulting firms and Apple, Google, 3M you may be less familiar with, Microsoft, Toyota. Again, big companies that we know tend to score very well on these innovation index type measures. And what you're seeing here is on the left-hand side, and I'll hit the top ones again because the font's a bit small. So it's Apple, Google, 3M, Samsung, and GE. And what they've been noted for is spending significant amounts of funding in R&D, of being able to commercialize new products out of that, and that a sizable portion of their revenues per year are coming from new products. What you see here on the right is from Fast Company. This is a magazine that's a bit geared towards startups and tech startups. We see similar names. We see Apple, we see Google, we see Facebook and Square that we don't see on the left-hand side. But what we recognize here is that there's a lot of movement in the space, and there are a lot of innovative firms out there that are doing some pretty cool things. And Google is one that's often cited. This is all from Google's headquarters in Mountain View. Why do we have such things? Why do we feed our employees from, I believe it's 17 restaurants on site? Why do we have bicycles and pool tables and gym memberships? They have mobile haircuts. So depending on what building you're in that day, there's an RV that's set up outside where you can get a free haircut. They do free car washes. So you just park your car, and they are rotating around with a portable tank washing your car while you're working. Why do they do these things?
Well, when your employees are happy, I guess they're more motivated.
Okay. So there's one rationale of employee satisfaction, employee retention, that we want to treat them well, and they will be happy and be better workers.
I guess it takes away distractions, so they're more free to think.
Okay. So if I'm not concerned about, oh, I need to go by the car wash, oh, I need to leave to go and find lunch, oh, I need to schedule a barber, I can get it all done, accessible and easy. Yep.
You could appeal to like the best candidates.
Okay. From recruitment, looks cool, sounds cool, all the candy you can eat, good recruiting factor. I'm just going to keep going this way. Yep.
On the happiness tangent, happiness also inspires creativity.
Okay. So if you're happy, if you're not worried, if you're not concerned, if you're satisfied, then maybe you'll be more creative and productive.
The employees are not necessarily tempted to go into other companies.
Okay.
They always have that innovation.
So it's a retention measure. Okay. Yep.
I'm not sure if this is right, but maybe like since they attract all the top people, it discourages people from like starting other things because it's tempting to work there.
Okay. So it helps retention from leaving to go to a new company as well as leaving to start your company. So we try and have a nice environment for you to enjoy what you do. That way you're not tempted to leave to do a startup. Yep.
Like if you have a positive atmosphere, then your product will probably feed off of how people put their effort into it.
Okay. So again, positive atmosphere, it reinforces creativity. We'll do one more. Yep.
Say since this type of atmosphere they have, it kind of makes it easy flowing, so the creativity comes around a lot easier.
Okay. So you have a structure whereby you're not punching a time clock when you get there and when you leave, and it feels a bit more informal, it feels a bit looser, and does that loose feeling invoke more innovation? Okay. So IDEO, a firm you may not be as familiar with, but they're a big design company, also in this area, out in Silicon Valley. And they've been responsible for developing some role in the Apple products, as well as doing a lot of work for companies as diverse as Amtrak and Acela to Prada to a host of other different areas. But what they're really known for is having this kind of design thinking way of doing things. And so this is what their office looks like.
It's like a kindergarten classroom.
So it's almost, and a lot of people are liking these elements of what you see here and what you see here as somewhere all of you probably have been before. What'd you say? Kindergarten. Arts and crafts. And if you do any research in education and formal education and higher ed, a lot of people will point to the longer you stay in school, the less creative you are. You go from this in kindergarten to we're going to line you up in rows and not let you talk to each other during class as you go through K-12. Does that make sense? To some extent. To some extent. So again, they're trying to create an environment here that brings back some of these elements of play into the work environment. Why do you think cubes, people familiar with cubicles? Know what I mean by a cubicle? Okay. Why were cubicles developed?
So you can focus on your own work?
So you can focus on your own work.
So it's like isolated from other people in the gym.
So isolated. Why do you think cubicles were developed? And recognize then, cubicles were developed by management, not by the employees. The managers, the owners of the company bought the cubicles. Why were cubicles developed?
They're more efficient and fit less space.
More efficient and less space.
They're organized.
Be organized.
The workplace, so like to keep life and the workplace separate.
Keep life and the workplace separate. Were invented so that people could watch you. So you could be monitored. So your lateness could be noted. So your absence would be documented. Prison. Good parallel for that. Arguably, you can fit more people in this kind of environment where you just have tables and sofas and chairs and people kind of work where they work and move where they move. Without being in your cubicle. And so you're seeing a lot of companies also go into these types of environments whereby you don't have a set workspace. Much as if you were to go to the library today, there are tables and chairs and sofas, and you sit where you sit, and you work where you work, and you talk to who you want to talk to, and you come back tomorrow, and you may sit somewhere different, and you may do something different, and you may talk to people that are different. And so it's more of a shared workspace without having a dedicated cubicle, particularly companies where their employees are traveling with some frequency. We don't need to pay for space that's not used a few days a week. So it's more of a rotating, more of a shared, more of an informal setup. Also, when we look at companies that have been innovative, one that isn't mentioned a lot anymore is Sony. And we're going to dive into this a little bit. So Google, Apple, Facebook, Square, IDEO, a lot of those are often cited. But with Sony, we'll take a look back here at some of the early elements, but essentially the first recording machine. So the first ability to tape record, the first transistor radio, television, at least in an affordable rate, one of the first color televisions, the world's first CD player. They invented the floppy disk, invented the Walkman. And we see other elements here regarding flat screen advancements, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, the first OLED TV, so again, better than LED. But we see lots of things that we recognize. And now we're seeing, again, PlayStation 4 coming end of this year. So they've done pretty well. And for 60 years, being innovative. People know their tagline. When you see the Sony logo, what is it? Make, believe. So it's make, period, believe, period. So it's not make believe, like pretend, but it's this element of making things that are inventive and creative and having some level of satisfaction and belief of bringing it to fruition. This is, again, about a 1 minute we'll take a look at. So for somebody old like me, this is a bit more movie than it is video game. I played Space Invaders and Missile Command. So in that sense, again, we're seeing something that arguably is going to be the next big thing for Sony. Not without competition. As you may know, a new Xbox is coming out at about the same season as well. But how do you differentiate? Again, particularly if you're a big player, how do you out-innovate Microsoft that's just as big, if not bigger, just as rich, if not richer, than Sony?
I know the big thing was that Xbox charges you for their online service.
Okay. We're not going to do a lot of add-on pricing. So in that way, by factor of buying the product, your online services are going to be available without added fee. So business model innovation.
The PS4, I think it's like $100 cheaper than the Xbox.
Price point. We recognize that people are still price sensitive, even for something that we don't need. We might think we need it. But even for things that are a luxury, there's some threshold that people are going to buy or not buy, or given the option of two competing platforms, they're going to buy one versus the other. So they set the price point a little bit lower.
There's exclusive games on each different places.
They're having exclusivity of content. So if you buy this box and you plug it up to your machine, your TV, may not do much unless you actually have some games. So in that way, having some element of exclusivity with the game providers, with the game titles, particularly these franchise titles that people have already bought into, is a differentiating source as well. Yep.
There were a lot of features that the PlayStation 3 had implemented before Xbox even brought them out.
Okay.
They had a web browser before Xbox had one.
Okay.
You could share the cost. So if you wanted to buy extra content, you could share the cost with a group of friends.
Okay.
They also had a Blu-ray DVD player, which Xbox still hasn't been able to bring out.
Okay. So again, more of a history of having more usability in the platform than some of the competing providers. Yep.
Me?
Yep.
What's the difference between Blu-ray and HD? I know the PlayStation has Blu-ray, like you can watch Blu-ray movies on it, while with the Xbox you can only watch HD movies.
Okay, so there's some element of format, and are you able to do other things and technical standards and elements like that that play in as well. But fundamentally, they're looking at what can we do in our form and our features and our exclusivity of content, of our add-ons, of our branding, that are going to make people want to buy in to one console versus another console. And once you've bought into a console, you start buying games for that, you're probably going to be married to that for a while. It's not something where you can just swap out and interchange the games. So in that way, things are designed for one piece of hardware, for one platform, and if you want the other thing, you have to buy that whole box as well. And so again, it's a big investment for a lot of people to decide which way they want to go. But again, Sony's been very effective at doing that for a long time. And as we look at these large companies, there's certainly a number of things that we can bring forward as we think about how to model startup culture and a creative culture and an innovative culture within your own firms. One is certainly encouraging the experimentation of new ideas, inviting people to brainstorm, inviting people to try new things. Another element is giving freedom. So in that way, having a management team and a founding team that lets people experiment, that lets people look for new ideas and better ways to solve needs in the marketplace. Also, you'd like to engage with people from outside of the organization. So in that way, these may be founders that have relationships with other founders at other companies, particularly if they're non-competing. But also you can look at going to the conferences and going to trade shows and really trying to get out of your office to understand what's going on in the marketplace. Open channels of communication. So these are perhaps simple things like open door policies where people can come and talk with upper management. It can also be a willingness to accept change, and in that way, again, trying things that are new. A big piece of that is how do you deal with failure? How do you deal with someone inside the organization that tries something that doesn't work? And in that way, are they reprimanded? Do they not receive a promotion, or do they not receive a raise? Or do you in some way incentivize or even reward things where people try something, but it may not work out in the end? Selection and promotion based on merit, certainly that helps drive innovation and helps people do the more difficult things and take more risk and try and have bigger impact. And then lastly, that if you have big goals, that you have sufficient financial, sufficient managerial, human, and time resources to try and reach them, so that the expectations may be high, but we're also willing to invest the time and the effort to make big things happen.